Ahead on the Bleav in Steelers show, I explain why the Steelers turned down the Bears trade request for head coach Mike Tomlin. And I explain something that I saw NFL playoff teams do that the Steelers don't do well and how they need to improve upon that for the 2025 season. Before we get into today's Bleav in Steelers show, I want to tell you about today's presenting sponsor, and that is BetOnline.ag. We're into the conference championships. You've got Bills, Chiefs, Eagles, Commanders. If you want to get in on any of the NFL playoff action, head over to BetOnline.ag today. There's in-game betting, over-unders, player props, and spreads. Head over to BetOnline.ag today to get started. BetOnline, the game starts here. My name is Mark Bergin. Welcome into the Bleav in Steelers show. You probably saw this report that the Pittsburgh Steelers turned down the Chicago Bears trade request for head coach Mike Tomlin. And you're probably wondering why. Let's first start out with the fact that Mike Tomlin does have a no trade clause in his contract. So it's likely that Tomlin, even if he were granted permission to say, hey, are you interested in going to the Chicago Bears, that he would turn that down. So let's start with there. And Tomlin, when he had his end of the year media availability, his end of the year news conference with reporters, this is a direct quote that he said. He said, for other NFL teams that are interested in me, quote, save your time, end quote, because he's got to be looking at this. The Patriots have already signed Mike Vrabel, but you've got openings with the Bears, the Cowboys, the Jags, the Saints, the Jets, and the Raiders. So he's probably looking at that landscape and saying, hey, I've got it better in Pittsburgh, even if we have a rinse and repeat of this past season and the past 6 playoff losses. And that's what he's probably looking at, because Tomlin signed a contract extension last offseason, and that was worth a reported $50 million. So there's stability there. And you say, well, Mark, the Chicago Bears have Caleb Williams, and the Pittsburgh Steelers have nobody under contract other than Skylar Thompson right now. Is Justin Fields coming back? Is Russell Wilson coming back? There's a lot of uncertainty there. Let me tell you a little bit about the Chicago Bears franchise, who I'm a little bit surprised even called Pittsburgh, considering the previous 2 trades that these teams have made. And I'm talking about the Chase Claypool trade, which netted you the 2nd-round pick, which got you Joey Porter Jr. And because it was the first pick of the 2nd round, it's almost like getting a 1st-round pick for Chase Claypool, who's no longer in the NFL. Then you also had the trade this past offseason for Justin Fields. And because Justin Fields didn't play 50% of the Steelers' offensive snaps, Pittsburgh's going to send Chicago a 6th-round pick for Justin Fields, a guy who is capable of being an NFL starter. And I'm an advocate for the Steelers to re-sign Fields for the 2025 season to serve as a bridge for whoever the next quarterback is. You give Fields the opportunity. You then try to draft and develop a quarterback, whether it's this offseason or next offseason, because when you pick at the 21st pick, I don't know who's going to be there that would be worthwhile for the Pittsburgh Steelers when it comes to the quarterback position. And if you want to get even more dire, go look at the free agent quarterbacks available. I've talked about that on previous podcasts. That's really not the purpose of this discussion. So then you have to look at the Bears as a franchise overall. And again, let's go in Mike Tomlin's brain of, would it be worthwhile to go be the head coach and get a fresh start with the new organization? The Bears chairman is a guy by the name of George McCaskey, who took over as chair in 2011. Since he took over as the chair, the Bears have been to the playoffs twice. They have not won a playoff game during that time span, and they've gone through several head coaches and several quarterbacks. But the bigger thing with the Bears in Chicago is that team going to stay in the city of Chicago at Soldier Field or move out to the suburbs? The reports are that they're considering moving to a suburb of Chicago called Arlington Heights. And the reason this matters is the Bears, with their current configuration at Soldier Field, have the NFL's smallest stadium, despite the fact that Chicago, behind New York and LA, is the 3rd largest media market in the country and in the league. So the Bears renovated Soldier Field in 2003. And the way that they've funded and refinanced it, to make a long story short, they used bonds to finance Soldier Field, the new iteration of Soldier Field, which if you've ever been there, they say it's like a spaceship landed on the Parthenon. It's a little bit goofy looking. But the best way I can describe to you how they financed it, and they've refinanced it several times to make the current payments less, but they're not paying down the principal owed on that already, something they did 20 years ago. And now they're talking about having to build and develop a new stadium, a stadium which is maintained by the city of Chicago. The Bears are not the owners of Soldier Field. And so this would be like taking out home equity accrued in your current home mortgage payment and then paying only the interest back on the mortgage for a long period of time. So then you're going to need a new stadium, and it's the lack of stability, it's the lack of success. And you say with the Chicago Bears, they've recycled general managers, head coaches, and quarterbacks really since they ran Lovie Smith out of town. A lot of parallels right now between what's going on with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Lovie Smith was fired. The Bears missed out on the playoffs, but was fired after a 10-win season. Does it sound a lot like what we're going through in Pittsburgh right now? And so Mike Tomlin's got to be looking at that and saying, you know what, even despite frustrations and lack of recent playoff success in Pittsburgh, I would much rather continue to work with the Rooney family than go to Chicago with the McCaskies, and it's just like, good luck. So that's probably why the Steelers just turned it down outright, not to sour that relationship with Tomlin, because they probably already know Mike Tomlin's answer. And again, I know it's what he's saying publicly, but look at the openings. Bears, Cowboys, Jags, Saints, Jets, Raiders. Would you rather coach those teams or the Pittsburgh Steelers? Straight up. I mean, you at least got TJ Watt. You at least got Minkah Fitzpatrick. Should have George Pickens for at least another year. You'll probably look to either re-sign Fields or Wilson. You just won 10 games. So that's why Mike Tomlin says what he says, because he's going to look at the big picture, the landscape of everything. And that's why he tells other teams, hey, save your time. Now, if I was Pittsburgh and if I was in the front office, I would consider it. I'm surprised that Chicago would even want to make that call. And the reason this report comes out is Chicago's front office wants to go to its fans and say, look, we tried to turn over every rock. We tried to even see if Mike Tomlin was available. We tried to do that. And I really think that both the Steelers and the Bears fan base would be thrilled if a Mike Tomlin trade happened. If you were the Steelers and you could get 2 draft picks back, one of them being a first-round pick, and maybe another first-round pick, or say a second or third-round pick, and maybe you break them up in drafts, you start to acquire that draft capital that you need to go take a big swing to go get the quarterback that you're going to need, considering the talent in the conference at the quarterback position. Mahomes, Allen, Jackson, Burrow. Those guys aren't going anywhere for the next decade. So if you're the Steelers, what are the things that you could do to go get a guy that's on that caliber? Because whether you re-sign Justin Fields or Russell Wilson, they're not on the same level. They're not. Speaking of the playoffs, something I noticed this past weekend was teams' ability not just to go for it on fourth down and be aggressive, but their ability to convert. I was particularly impressed with this in the Washington Commanders win against the Detroit Lions. Now, I know the Commanders turned the Lions over 5 times, but the Commanders converted 3 of their 4 fourth down conversions with a rookie quarterback in Jaden Daniels. And I know that the Steelers beat the Commanders this past season. They went 3 of 4. I'm going to go through all of the teams that won this past weekend and how they did on fourth down. The Chiefs were 1 of 2. The Commanders were 3 of 4. Eagles were 1 and 1, and so were the Bills. The Steelers in their playoff game were 0 for 1 on fourth down. And during the regular season, the Steelers only converted 36.84% of their fourth down conversions. That was 31st in the NFL. And this is a part of the reason why I think Fields needs to be in the next iteration with this offense if you're keeping Arthur Smith, because it's the ability to force the defense to play an honest 11 on 11, be able to make a play with both your legs and to be able to throw the football. And I was blown away by Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders' ability to go forward on fourth down and not to settle for field goals. No knock on Chris Boswell, who's coming off a career year. He's an all-pro kicker this past year for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But when you're trying to knock the bully out, you've got to go and do it, and you can't just settle for, we'll settle for 3 and we'll pad our lead or we'll cut into a deficit. If you're going to knock the bully out, the difference between scoring touchdowns and settling for field goals was something I really noticed in the playoffs this past season, and it's not how the Steelers play football. Now, if you are Mike Tomlin and you're trying to decide, should we go for it on fourth down? If I'm 31st in the NFL at converting, okay, you got to settle for 3. But Mike Tomlin, Arthur Smith, the rest of the offense, have plays in your playbook and scheme something up to where you can convert on those key downs. And that goes back to red zone efficiency as well, but fourth down efficiency. It was something that I'm noticing the really good teams do, and they're using metrics. And I know you might say, well, the reverse argument of that would be, look what happened to the Ravens in that they went for two-point conversions. They didn't convert either. And Mark Andrews' drop pass, his fumble, was the difference in the game between the Ravens and the Bills. But knowing how to use those analytics in your favor to give your team the best opportunity to win, the fourth down efficiency and the red zone efficiency is something for the Pittsburgh Steelers offense to continue to take those next steps. They have to be improved upon. And again, I look at the fourth down efficiency of the teams this past weekend. The teams that won was downright impressive of not just their aggressiveness to go for it, but their ability to convert. And again, if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, 31st in the NFL during the regular season on fourth down efficiency, 36.84%. You've got to get that above 50%. And it's something that has been the MO of the Commanders this past year, number 1 in fourth down efficiency among all the teams in the NFL. And that was on display yet again after their big upset win this past weekend over the Detroit Lions. My name is Mark Bergin. This has been another edition of the Bleav in Steelers show. I'll be with you this offseason as news comes along with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Still have several guests that we'll get to here on the Bleav in Steelers show, but I wanted to provide a Monday holiday edition of the Bleav in Steelers show. Hope all of you have great start to your work weeks, and we'll see what happens. The championship round between the 4 teams that are left. Let me know who you think is going to win the Super Bowl. And then as news happens this offseason with the Pittsburgh Steelers, I'll be back live on this feed providing my insight and analysis. I want to thank today's presenting sponsor, and that's BetOnline.ag. I also want to thank the Bleav Network. Go check out the other great content, a lot of other great shows on the Bleav Network. If you enjoy listening to Bleav in Steelers on Apple and Spotify, do me a favor. Find the Bleav in Steelers show. That's BLEAV in Steelers. Go leave us a 5-star review. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button on the Mark Bergin YouTube channel. Again, my name is Mark Bergin. This has been another edition of Bleav in Steelers. I'll see you next time. Until then, take care. So long, everybody.